Hey everyone, shapes and trains. It is all about shapes and trains. What am I talking about? One is that as we are trying to rebuild function in people, or we're just trying to train people, we're always looking at what are the base shapes? What are the fundamentals? Now we speak the language of archetypes, squat, lunge, pistol. There's only that many things that your shoulders and hips do, believe it or not. And so we're always looking at, hey, are we spending time in these fundamental shapes and loading these fundamental shapes, even end-range isometric? Second, though, a useful construct is to grab all of that fascia and fascial theory, and you can take a page right out of Anatomy Trains by Thomas Myers, and look at these lines of fascia. Look at these fascial lines. How are we stressing that? So let me show you an example. Here we have my favorite, hey, it's Diane Fu, my favorite coach. Now check this out. Simple drill that we can do, unloaded, anything, is have her stand on her favorite leg. I know you got a favorite leg, right? And then I'm like, hey, why don't you reach out as far as you can this way. Now pause. So this very much, go ahead and come back up so you don't have to die. You are the die. This position that she was just in is a position that really challenges this anterior line, of this anterior fascial line. And if you're ever gonna, do a kipping movement or put a ball or throw something, right? You need to have access to that. And one of the things that we see in the language of knee rehab, lower extremity rehab principles is that we're seeing a lot of people currently on the internet talking about getting knees over toes, right? Which is a whole different conversation we're gonna have with you very soon about being able to jump, what's the right word, from a flat foot, full foot? Full foot jump, right? You've got to be able to load that anterior line, but what we're seeing is that many of us only ever exposed to that same line movement, but do it from a hinge position. So that's a totally different movement right there. So in this position, she's loading the connective tissue system very differently. Now go ahead and go to that long line with the hip extended. Now this is more of a hip extension movement. And even though the relative positions of the joints, knee, foot here, go back the other direction, change it to a hinge. All of a sudden, those are very, very similar shapes. But what happens in the construct of the connective tissues upstream is very different. And if you're not exposing your athletes to some of these positions, you're missing some of the glory of what the body can do. And no wonder that we have some of these sort of missing holes, or we have these blank holes in our function. So for example, like we get really good at squatting, but then it just turns out you're terrible at loading the hip in extension. And it's not just hip moving into extension, it's loading the fascia in that plane. So check this out. One of the things that you can do is even take something like the Y balance test from FMS, and you can begin to play with that. So go ahead and put that foot out in front of you, right? And she can do that in two ways, as we talked about. She can kick as far behind her in that leg as you can, so reach that leg behind you as far as you can, right? Single leg work, balance, working on breathing, warm up, play around. How am I feeling today? Kick the leg out to the other side as far as you can. We're always looking at maintaining that good pressure between the ball and foot of heel, right? Her arch isn't collapsed. She can go behind and do a cool bowler, plie, right? Just, again, challenging the position. Can she breathe? That's very competent, by the way. Sort of annoyingly competent. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, Diane, that's pretty cool. But this time, keep your torso upright. So now look. All of a sudden, as I add a little bit of load here, and look, she's strong enough here that she can manage this. But if I was just like, hold it up, hold it at your chest, just by keeping the chest upright a little bit, she can't quite hide or changes the demand. That sounds very much like squatting, right? Where all of a sudden, instead of just doing an air squat, I'm like, no, you have to squat with your torso upright because that's where sport is. That challenges the whole system a little bit different. So suddenly those same positions with just a little bit of a ball hold, that's very different. Does that feel different to you? Feels very different. I don't like it as much, right? All of those shapes get played and different. And this is why fundamentally all we're looking at is, hey, how can we challenge these fascial lines in the context of play? And really it's just the watchword here is exposure. But one of the things that we're always playing around with is, when do I do some of this stuff, right? When am I going to sacrifice some of the big meaty elements of my programming? Well, this is all great warm-up stuff. So if you've ever been to one of my classes, I might hand you a ball and we'll just warm people up and get in touch and kind of integrated. But some of this stuff I just feel like is best done at home in your own kitchen. And this is one of our favorite tools, the slack block, which is just a great flat surface on a squishy piece of proprietary foam shape. But the idea here is that she can't collapse. She's still going to have full foot, full awareness, but it's going to have to wobble. But all of a sudden, if you dress these same shapes up with a little bit of foot function play, Diane can do all of the same things while challenging that downstream effect by putting a little bit more sort of stabilization, balance demand into those things. So she can do all of those same drills that we may be warming up, but just while she's messing around at home. That's very competent. It's annoyingly so, Diane. You know, it's almost like you know how to use your feet and jump. Also, city badminton champion. What year was that?
Too long ago.
Too long ago in high school, city high school badminton champion. Once an athlete, always an athlete. But look at these positions and shapes, just challenging that a little different. This is an easy thing to be doing. Even if she spins it around because of our favorite position, front back, now she's got her heel off the ground. Ooh boy, this starts to look very, very Cal-Dietzy, doesn't it? This looks a little bit triphasic. It looks like very athletic positions where she's going to have to balance on the ball of her foot, manage that, and change strategies. Here's this long lever, open chain strategy. Here's a hip hinge strategy. Idea here is, fundamentally, we're always looking at the shapes. Are my athletes spending time in these positions, either in warm-up or cool-down in play? How do I get more tasty little snacks in there to build on this idea? And ultimately, it comes down to, for us, archetypes or shapes, and then you can layer in some of those fascial ideas. And when you start to do that, suddenly Pilates makes a lot of sense. Olympic lifting makes a lot of sense. CrossFit makes a lot of sense. Yoga makes a lot of sense, right? You're suddenly seeing that there's a lot of ways to challenge these fundamental shapes. And when you start to overlay them together, things get really clear very fast. Then it's just an issue of what's the most fun. Diane Fu, sorry to leave you hanging. See you guys.